I have chaired many commissions of inquiry, served on commissions of inquiry. Politicians love commissions of inquiry. What politicians love are vehicles that can take them out of the heat and make them look good. And that's very human. It's human trait. It's not just politicians. They happen to be just better at it than some of us. But with a commission of inquiry, there's a dispute going on, and so the politicians can say, well, arm's length, we'll get a neutral person to look at this, and then they step out of the fray, and for the next 2, 3, whatever length of time, years that it takes, if any question about it, they say, sorry, I can't comment until the report is in, until we get all the facts.
Give them an escape.
Exactly. And I said, well, hey, boy, isn't that good? Until I served on a commission of inquiry. And we got the terms of reference from the minister that had appointed us. And I looked at the terms of reference. We couldn't even get all the data we needed to look at the problem, let alone come up with solutions. In other words, the politician was still in control through those terms of reference. And if you think about the American one that I quote as an example, the Warren Commission, when they did the Kennedy assassination, and they asked him, well, why didn't you look at the mafia, the Dallas connection, and so on? And his comment was, it wasn't in my terms of reference.
Yeah.
All right? And
absolutely.
so, yeah, well, now, Morris Strong wrote the terms of reference for the IPCC. Okay, and this is where
there you have it.
Yeah.
So basically, he defined what would be addressed and what wouldn't be addressed.
Exactly. And he started with the definition of climate change was those changes that are caused by human activity. In other words, don't look what the sun is doing. Don't look what the oceans are doing. Only look at the human portion of it. Well, here's the problem I had right from the start when I saw this. How can you possibly determine the human portion of the change if you don't know how much it's changing naturally? Mm-hmm. And, of course, we still don't know what the natural variability is, except that we know that it far exceeds any possible impact that humans could have on it.
We don't know because it's not in the terms of reference.
Exactly. Exactly. And in fact, there are two major changes in solar activity that are not included in their studies and not even included in their computer models, because the computer models are also restricted by these terms of reference, yet they're the basis of the forecasts.
Yeah. Now, with regard to the IPCC, I want to come back to that because, there's a lot of talk about how the scientific data is being crafted with regard to the summaries that are produced, and I guess there have been a lot of real climate scientists who have been working at the IPCC that have gotten frustrated with the process that's going on. Can you explain?
Yes, well,
and
of course, the most famous one, and the person I have huge respect for is Richard Lindzen at MIT. And even when I was just starting out in this, Lindzen was already in the forefront of it, and of course was vilified and attacked and funding problems and so on. So he quit. He was on the IPCC for the first two reports, and then he realized what was going on and just quit. Chris Landsea, who was the hurricane expert, is another one that quit. And of course, my question is, were they still entitled to part of the Nobel Prize because they worked on it, but probably not. But anyway, there were several scientists who stepped aside, but of course they suffered for that because they couldn't say, well, I'm on this international committee, and in university, your curriculum vitae is everything. The more you can fill that and pad that, and of course one of the things that's causing so much distortion in academia today is the funding. Because
I am so glad you said that.
Yeah.
I am so glad, because I have been hammering this on the show. I mentioned just in the first hour, as a matter of fact, the Chapter 35 of Agenda 21 deals with science for sustainable development. Well, how do you get science to be for anything?
Yep. Well, exactly. And here's the thing, and I watched this through my career. When I started, it was publish or perish, and that's fine. You say, okay, publishing and getting your ideas out there in your community and doing that's part of how you establish your intellectual credibility. But it came to the point where the money you brought in was more important not only to your colleagues but to the university, because the universities realized that they could make the argument reasonably legitimately that, we've got costs of providing you with an office and heat and everything else, so we're going to shave up to 35% in some cases off the top of any research funds you get. So you then become valuable in terms of the funding you're bringing to the university. And so this is what caused that rot. And we haven't got time, but there's a classic story of in Canada here of a woman who was getting $250,000, and they discovered she'd cooked all her data, and they covered it up. She went to another university and, of course, got hired instantly because she of the amount of money that she was bringing in. But the funding thing, and of course, what this also did, Darren, was that when you applied for funding, the funding mostly came from government. And if you look at the studies done on climate, for example, I think the figure is $70 billion a year in the U.S. And and I sat on committees of people applying for funding and saying, look, I want to do this research project. They very quickly learned that just like with Google, you got to get those keywords in there. You've got to, you've got to do the things that are going to push the buttons that are going to release that money from the government. Yeah. And of course, those are going to be things that the government want to direct. And
I know a friend. I know a person who has been very heavily involved in grant writing. And one of the things that she said is that, once you learn the lingo, it becomes really easy to get the grants for the people or the entities for which you're writing the grants, that all you have to do is use those key phrases.
Exactly. And I'll give you an example in terms of, I think humor is so essential to point out the stupidity of things. But about 20 years ago, I publicly made the statement that I was desperately looking for a connection between climate and AIDS, and the funding would pour out of the heavens. Right?
There you go.
And so, just trying to illustrate that point.
Anything that can demonize human activity and give a shot in the arm to their agenda to control human activity and curtail it. Hey, they'll release all the funds you want.
Yeah. Okay. Now
let's go ahead and take a break here and hold your thought. We'll come back here in a moment. Folks, our guest is Dr. Tim Ball. His website, friendsofscience.org, is linked up with ours. And we're talking about ClimateGate and the so-called science behind global warming or global cooling or whatever they want to call it on a given day. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change. We'll be back here in a moment here on the Republic Broadcasting Network.